Hello, and welcome to this production from InSource Solutions. My name is Louis Talley, Technical Solutions Architect. And today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Wonderware Intelligence 2017 and some tips and tricks that can make your life a lot easier. So one of the first things you'll notice with Intelligence 2017 is now we do all of the configuration outside of the IDE. So very similar as before, but the editor has been revamped to give us a bunch of additional information. So what you're looking at now represented all the different views inside of the IDE, the intelligence view, but all the different ways everything was put together. One of the things I really like about this is you can see where everything is utilized and how it relates. So for instance, I'm using the pre-built Wonderware MES content. So in this case, if I click on one of my measures, OEE data for instance, you can see which relevant dimensions are utilized in the data being linked together. And likewise, if I click on the downtime data, you can see the same thing. So in downtime data, I don't have a relationship between item, jobs, and work orders. I just thought that was really cool to be able to see that without having to sort of open up the objects like you used to in the IDE and sort of click around and look. And all the configuration you'll notice is over here on the right. Everything that you had before, much easier to work around in. I found it a lot easier to deploy this out. So I imported this content, restored a database backup of my MES database, and literally just changed the name of it here, and then went up to the menu and selected the deploy all option. And I backfilled my data almost 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and it nearly instantly backfilled everything. So I thought that was really cool. It's really fast, deployed seamlessly, no issues there. So let's shift over and look in the Intelligence Analytics client and see some cool stuff you can do over there. So I'm going to open the blank Intelligence Analytics client and just browse to one of the pre-built Wonderware samples. Now in this case, because we're using MES data, there's about 28 worksheets that are pre-built for us. So I restored this from an older version. I was just playing with it today. And one of the things that always kind of bugged me about this, it's got a bunch of really cool data, but specifically if I look at my performance data, because this is a demo that just constantly runs, I get some really high production values for performance. All right, so I've got a performance of almost 12,000 here. And that throws off, especially if I'm demoing this and it just sort of throws everything off. And so I was like, well, there's got to be an easier way to make my life a little bit more simple without having to go into the database and filter this out or edit how it's calculated or so forth. And so I found this really neat thing. I can come over here, worksheet where this dashboard was built from, to see this. I'll take it out of presentation mode so we can actually get at the underlying configuration. And a really simple way to filter out that data, you can always right click on it and exclude it, but I can actually take a measure and I can show that as a filter. And so if you notice up here in the upper right hand corner, so that's all the performance that I have. In this case it's a calculated value, but it's coming from the MES database. So in this case I want to constrain it. So watch as I constrain this down, and you can type values in here if you want to. I'll just drag this down. So I tweaked with the filter a little bit. I think I got about around 500. Sort of normalizes it out. And one of the really cool things I can do here is actually come in and apply this globally across the entire worksheet. So if I apply this to everything that uses this data source, and that's one of the really nice things, instead of having to go touch this everywhere. So if I go back and look at my performance dashboard, you can see those anomalies are now gone, and I can actually focus on how the data actually looks. I thought that was a really cool thing. That's not necessarily a new feature, it's just something that I thought was really cool to share. One thing that is new, you'll notice, is the dashboard is the device preview. This is really cool. So if I click on device preview, I can see what the content would look like. So one of the really cool things about Intelligence is what it allows you to do is collaborate content. So I build worksheets, assemble them into dashboards, and then I can publish them out to the dashboard server, and users can consume that data from a variety of different platforms in HTML5. So if I want to see what that looks like, I can see what the user experience would look like. So we can change this different tablet from an iPad, iPad mini. There's a bunch of different examples in here just to kind of get the look and feel of what it would look like. You can see what it would look like on my phone. And of course, when you publish this, you have the option of saying I want to publish out the filters or not. So probably if I were publishing some content for a phone, I wouldn't necessarily publish out the filters with it, although you could if they were small. You can, of course, also go in and you can add your own layouts. So if you have a device that's not in there, or if you want to change the orientation or something like that. So that was a really neat capability that we can now deliver with the Intelligence Client. And of course, we also have a lot of control over the layout, how it looks. So remember, intelligence is all about being able to understand your data in different types of ways. So we've seen a couple of neat little ways I can sort of look at the data differently from a filtering perspective. But if we want to start with the actual basic data itself, I sort of like to tell a story around it. So I can start with just a generic value, and you can interact with the system a number of different ways. You can double click, you can drag and drop. So if I just drop a value on the screen there and we zoom in here, this represents a total amount of product that I produced. And so there's absolutely no context wrapped around that. And so that's one of the things that Intelligence does a really good job of, is allowing you to contextualize your data. A simple way to contextualize my good production counts, or sorry, my total production counts, might be if I look at it by product. And so I can come over here and interact with any of these shelves. So if I want to drop it on the column shelf, I can do that. Or I don't really like that, I want to drop it on the row shelf, I can do that. You can also come over here and click this Show Me button. And the Show Me button does a really good job of basically whatever you select to try and show you the sort of ideal way to visualize that, if you will. So if I want to see a highlight chart or a bubble chart, just some interesting uses of colors, shapes, and sizes to draw your eye to outliers of data. In this case, we don't have any outliers of data because we haven't really added any data into it. But so if I sort of go back to my original text-based view here, and so we're sort of building a report, if you will. And so we started with no context wrapped around the data, and then we added product. Well, now maybe we want to look at that by piece of equipment. So on individual pieces of equipment, did I have any anomalies in my data? Well, you can see as I start to add things, it quickly gets busy. So this is where I really want to take advantage of that Show Me button. So right out of the gate, I can quickly see that, all right, on bottling line 3, dark ale bottles, that's where I produce the most. Well, that's maybe good, maybe bad. Did I have a lot of quality problems where of the production were a large percentage of them rejects? I don't really know that at this point. So we can add additional data to it to help understand what it is we're looking at. And so let's say instead of the color being related to total production, let's relate the color to rejected production. So now we see that the same scenario, bottling line 3, dark ale bottles, is still dark, but this down here we see this automatically pulled my attention to, and if I hover the mouse over it, I see I have a higher percentage of reject count. So it looks like I have a quality problem on this line for this particular product. And we can even take it a step further, and maybe we can look at that by shift. And we can say, okay, for this particular product, for this particular shift, this is where I had the highest percentage of reject counts. So Intelligence is really great at doing things like that. So I use it to sort of tell a story and sort of slice and dice the data. And then you can come in and start to ask your data questions. So you can say, okay, you know what? Let's filter on shift, and let's pull shift out of the equation. Well, we're already doing that. So let's show the filter. And let's say, seems like I'm having some problems on night shift with my demo here. So let's pull that out and see where my next biggest offender is. So my next biggest offender is bottling line 3 on day shift, right? And so I can extrapolate that out further. I can go and pick a specific date and things like that. But you can see here that I've gotten a really good, quick visual way to understand where potential problems might exist with my data by using the Analytics Client. So anyway, so I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for your time.